the Inner Game podcast, brought to you by the Science of Excellence, presented by Rob Hume, the leading elite athlete mental performance coach. Unleash your power.
Boom. So, welcome onto the show, Matt Langridge. We have somebody who has achieved unbelievable things in Olympic sport, in rowing. He's somebody who has the unique, what's the word I'm looking for? The unique honour of having a bronze, a silver and gold in different Olympics. And we've got Matt on the show today to try to find out a little bit more about how you actually did it, and what were some of the challenges that you faced. How did you get beyond them? How did you keep going? How did you keep finding the motivation to keep coming back to get that goal? So thank you very much, Matt, for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me on, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some of them. I definitely can answer most of them, so we'll see how we go on.
Cool. So how did it all start for you? If we could rewind time a little bit to when you were a younger lad, what was it that brought you to rowing? How did this your dive into this sport begin for you?
Well, yeah, I think we definitely are diving back a bit now, so I'll try to remember. But I think for me, it's kind of probably quite a simple story. That I was originally inspired by the Olympics. When I was a kid, used to love all sports, swimming, football, rugby, athletics, tennis, any sport available to me that I could give a go and try, I would do. I just love being active, love being outside, love competing mainly. So yeah, I was kind of keen to do any sport. And then it was 1996. So I used to, when the Olympics came around, I would just be glued to the TV for those whole 2 weeks. I think my earliest memory of the Olympics was 92 when Olympic Christie won the gold medal. I think that's my earliest memory. But by the time 96 came along, I was kind of glued to the TV for that whole 2 weeks. And for people who can't remember, at the time, the Team GB were nowhere near as successful as we are now. We didn't get the however many golds we got in, when I was competing in Rio or London or Tokyo. So at the time, we were on particularly bad games, and the big talk of success was these two rowers, Steve Vega and Matthew Pinson. So as they were kind of the favourites for the gold medal, I kind of made extra special attention to make sure I'd watch the race. And then after the race, the commentators were kind of talking about how rowers tended to be quite tall, and I was quite tall for my age, and I think that was kind of the initial seed got planted.
Yeah.
And then I kind of forgot about it a little bit, and then I turned out I was kind of walking the dog one day, and I saw, it's amazing once you've seen it on TV how you suddenly notice that there's this rowing club 5 minutes from my house that I've walked past hundreds of times. I've just not paid any attention to. I think I'd seen them out rowing and just kind of thought it was just some hobby thing, or I didn't really even think it was a sport. And then suddenly I saw it on TV and I was like, okay, this is really close. I mean, maybe I should give it a go. And then I think the final straw was I went down to the gym, and I've never seen one since, but there was this row machine in the corner, and I was with a couple of my mates, and there was this row machine in the corner, and it had this like old-fashioned screen. I mean, we're going back to the 90s, so it wasn't anywhere near the technology now. It wasn't like the new flat screen with all the graphics and everything.
Yeah.
It was an old, real basic computer stickman boat, and you could set your the standard, and then obviously depending on how fast you went, you were racing this little map.
Yeah.
You raced. And obviously, kind of being a kind of kid or excited, I naturally put in Olympic standard, and I actually beat them. I won it, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, clearly I know now that there's no way that was Olympic standard. Apart from it, because as a 13-year-old kid who never rowed before, there's no way I was Olympic standard at that point. But I remember my mates being like, "Oh wow, you're quite good at this," and like secretly trying to play it down. But that was it for me. I was like, right, okay, I've got to go down and try rowing now because I think this could be something I could be quite good at. So I kind of put to the courage, went down to the rowing club, and asked to sign up. So
that's a great story, and it just goes to show, as you say, like how often you'd walk past that rowing club and your mind hadn't been drawn to it, and I find it amazing how the mind can, when it latches onto something, when something triggers that, the imagination or that motivation inside of us, that when that happens, you start to notice things that were always there, but you weren't paying attention to.
Yeah, I think it's inspiration at the end of the day. I think and that's what I think is so great about the Olympics, is that for me it showcases all these sports that we have, but people just don't, because they're not regularly on TV. I mean, obviously, naturally, if people are drawn to football or rugby because they're the ones they get to watch all the time. But then the Olympics showcases all these sports, and I think most people will be surprised that actually there's a lot of these facilities really close to them that, again, like me, they just hadn't paid any attention to. They'd kind of walked past, walking the dog, and just brushed it off, not even noticed it then. I mean, I must have walked past it hundreds of times because I had to walk the dog every day. So, it was only as soon as I saw the Olympics, I thought, okay, well, actually, it's something I could go and do and give a go to. And I think, again, it was those little seeds that got planted that secretly, kind of inspired me to go down and give it a go.
And we messaged before coming on about the area that you're from, that kind of the Northwich area. Is it a club that was in and around the Northwich area?
Yeah, so it's Northwich Rowing Club. So that's the club that I started at. I mean, obviously, because since kind of progressing through the team has taken me away, but that's kind of I'd always say that's like my home club. Yeah. The one that I'm probably still to stay most loyal to. I mean, they got me going and got me to where I am now, really. So, anyone's in the area and fancy going down and giving it a go, it's on the Weaver, and you can pop down. I'm sure they'll be happy to take you.
Yeah, and I'm curious to know, like, is there a history? Has there been a history of people coming from an area like that, a club, the Northwich Club, who've then gone on to do what you did, or did you kind of break the mold there in some respects?
I'll probably get told off if I said I broke the mold, because I think there were one or two people who'd done kind of loosely GB stuff before me. Right. But I think I was probably the first one to really go and do it properly, and certainly then go on to the senior Olympic team. Yeah. So I think we'd had like one or two juniors kind of on the periphery of the junior system, but no one had really kind of significantly broken into it, and certainly hadn't done the Olympics or the senior World Championships. Yeah. So I think for me, I probably was the person kind of broke the mold. But one of the great things, again, it comes down to inspiration. And I think since me, there's been, in Tokyo, we had two guys. Not two guys, a girl and a guy, both brother and sister. They're from the same area. So they didn't actually go to Northwich Rowing Club, but they're from the same area. They went to school from the same town as me. And they're both in the Rio team. One was in the men's 8, the other was in the women's 8. So I think, kind of all it sometimes takes is it being shown that it's possible. Exactly. And then as soon as, again, I don't know, I'm nothing special. I don't consider myself not this man mountain so I think, as soon as people see and think, okay, well, if he can do it, then why can't we? And there's not just been those. We've had so many juniors go and do juniors and under-23s, and I think it's just come from being shown the route and the pathway, really. And I think that's, again, if we talk about inspiration, that's what it comes down to. It's just showing it's possible.
Yeah, that was why I asked it. that, well, for two reasons. One, and you will know much better than I, but I would guess that historically, that the GB rowers perhaps would come from certain places, certain locations around the country, certain schools, certain areas, which may not necessarily
the public schools. Is that what you're trying to?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
You're probably beating around the bush, but yeah, basically the public school.
That's what I was trying to say, and then I was leading into what you then said. It's the environment, is so important, and having somebody who shows that it's possible, because not everybody can be the first. It's very hard to do the thing that you did, be the first. It's very hard to break the mold, but in breaking the mold, it then opens the door for other people to go, that's a guy from or girl, whoever it is that's done it, they're just like me. They're from the same type of background as I am, from a similar sort of place. They're not these, superhumans from this luxurious place. And this is, why I'm so passionate about sport, about teaching people some of the things that I've learned, and this podcast, so that people who are watching this, are listening to exactly what you said there. You've not come from some, special, private school, all these amazing facilities and all this, the trimmings that can sometimes come with that. It came from a seed that was planted by seeing someone else do it, and that invoked something in you to then dedicate your life to doing what you're doing. And that this is what I find so powerful about sport, because it can change somebody's life, can't it?
Yeah, I think definitely. To answer the first point about how kind of the makeup of rowing, I think it's definitely changed a lot since I've been a team. Like when I joined the juniors, it was very much, I was the kind of minority from a club and not from a public school, from the north as well. Because rowing tends to, the majority be more like the southeast. But then by the time I was in the Olympic team, I was gone from being very much in the minority to the majority. A lot less people from you still do get a few because they've got very good programs.
Yeah.
But I think, like me, there's other people like me all around the country who's kind of are kind of showing the way and showing that it's possible. And I think it just takes that initial one. And like I said, I don't think I was special because I was the first one, but for me, it was kind of, I just kind of had a goal and I worked for it and then eventually got there. But I think, in me doing it, it shows lots of other people that they can do it. When I did it, people ask me, oh, when did you kind of decide you wanted to go to the Olympics? Well, I didn't suddenly, when I was 12 years old, watch the Olympics and go, oh, that's where I'm going to be one day. Obviously, it's kind of, I just did the sport and then I enjoyed it. And back in the back of my head, I would love to have been there, but I never thought it was an actual possibility.
Yeah.
But now I think there is, for people who are kind of successful and from certainly the area or other areas now, because I've done it or other people like me have done it, they can now say, well, hold on a minute, he's managed to follow it all the way to the Olympics. Why couldn't I do it?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of, it just shows the kind of, the once it's been shown it's been capable of, then it's amazing. I find it, I'm not on the same level, but like Usain Bolt, for instance, to be a real kind of groundbreaker, that's something really special. But it shows how once somebody's done it, how suddenly the whole field moves on. I was fortunate enough that I was in Beijing and London, and I didn't actually watch his Beijing race live, but I watched his London one live. And actually, the time he got in London was quicker than his Beijing one. But everyone assumed it was slow because he wasn't as far in front.
Yeah.
But actually, it's not because it said he actually gone quicker. It's just the fact that he'd broken that new level, he set that new standard, and everybody else was catching up. And that's, I think that for me has always been fascinating. That it is amazing that once one person does it, how suddenly everybody else who probably were always capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Suddenly sees that do as well. Now, I'm not in any way comparing myself to Usain Bolt by that, but far from it. But I think it is just showing the way, and then people kind of are able to follow.
Definitely. I doing the work that I do and working with the athletes who I work with, a lot of it comes down to this, mystical word or powerful word, belief. And I spent a lot of time studying something called the placebo effect, which is essentially just a belief in something. Why is it when scientists, experimenters do these experiments where they can give somebody a pill with nothing more in it than sugar, but they've told them that it's something else, and that their mind and body reacts to this, fake pill? Why is it that the body then responds to that in belief of what that placebo pill does? And the guy that invented the placebo, not invented it, came across it and coined the term. He was a guy that essentially, I'll whiz through the story. I don't know if you know it, but he was a surgeon, a doctor in World War II, and long story short, he ran out of morphine, and he was having to go and operate on people in the field. They had the legs and arms blown off, and he ran out of morphine. And all the soldiers, they knew that when they got injured, when they got hurt, that they'd get a shot of morphine, and that would ease their pain, and then whatever procedure could be done on them. And unfortunately, this doctor, his name's eluding me at the moment, he ran out, but he didn't want the soldiers to then go into shock over not having the morphine. So he told his assistant, said, listen, just fill up this morphine bottle that was clearly labeled morphine, fill it with water, and just give it to me and do it exactly as you normally would do. And I'm just going to give him the water. He injected him, and then, took this guy's leg off with nothing but water. And to his amazement, this guy felt no pain. And the doctor was like, what is going on here? And then he did it again and again and again and again. And he said that as long as he survives the war himself, that he was going to spend the rest of his career figuring out what the heck was going on there. And that was like the birth of the placebo. That's why there are placebo trials. And there's something very unique which goes on inside the mind when somebody believes something is possible. And the story which was coming to my mind is when you was talking there, Matt, was Roger Bannister. Breaking that 4-minute mile. That doctors at the time and scientists were saying that somebody could die in trying to do that. It wasn't possible. So he was able to break the mold. He became the first. And then, the story is then that so many other people went and broke the 4-minute barrier after that, all because they'd seen somebody do it. And there was nothing really different in their capabilities before or after that, just that. They'd seen that it was possible.
Yeah, I think. I do find it really fascinating. I think a lot of it comes down to it's the guys like Roger Bannister who are able to really believe in something when it's not been done.
Yeah.
Whereas once for all the other guys who followed, they knew it could be done. They might not have done it themselves, but they knew it was possible.
Yeah.
But for somebody like Roger they're the kind of real kind of groundbreakers. That it's those guys who to really believe, and that's the hardest thing I think in sport, is to do that when you're doing something that hasn't yet been done.
Yeah.
Because it's really powerful.
Were the times in your career when you were striving to do what you did do, were the times where doubts crept up into your mind? Can I really do it? The moments where things got tough, where you thought, gosh, I don't know if I'm going to achieve what I wanted to do. I'm presuming that a gold medal was an achievement, but it may have been less than that. It may have been getting to the Olympics at first. Was there any time before achieving any of your kind of targets that you did achieve where you were doubting whether you were going to do it in some way. Did that happen at all? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's more than not, I would probably say. I mean, I think for me, so I guess just one of the points is that for me, it was always about the gold. I'll be quite honest about that. Like I say, it wasn't the even when I very first went, I was kind of, I mean, my first games, I probably didn't actually at the time believe that we could win it, but I thought we could possibly medal. And unfortunately, we missed out in the final by about that much. But then, yeah, the other three, when I got the silver and the bronze, there's no doubt I was going for the gold.
Yeah.
That was the aim, that was the target, and I was bitterly disappointed not to get it. So yeah, there's certainly doubts certainly after it, and thinking, okay, well, can I carry on? Am I going to be able to get there? Have I maybe so? But I think a lot of it for me is accepting that that's normal, that you are going to have those doubts. I don't believe anybody who doesn't ever doubt themselves. I mean, even the most confident sports people, I think at some point in their career they have them, and I think if they're not, they're not being totally truthful. Yeah. I think that's not normal, but I think the big way is the way that you kind of rationalize them in your head, you get over them and you carry on. And I think that for me is kind of been the key, that it's accepting that's completely normal, and then being able to kind of rationalize it and then refocus and carry on.
How did you go through that process of taking the I don't know, I don't want to use the word. How did you turn it around from not achieving what you wanted to? How did you work through that in your head? What sort of process did you go through for that, Matt?
You mean after the disappointment of not kind of?
Yeah. How did you turn it around inside your head to go, well, I've not done it, but now I'm going to? Was there anything particular that you did to kind of get?
I mean, I think for me it was that. I mean, I'm always suppose. I guess with when I talk about the disappointment of the bronze and silver, and you're kind of talking to people, you always have to kind of clarify, because people are like, well, how can you be disappointed with an Olympic medal? But for me, it was because it wasn't the thing I'd gone for. If I'd gone there, going saying, okay, my aim, my target is the bronze medal, I'd come away with the bronze, I'd have been the happiest man there. The same with the silver, but my aim would very much be for the gold medal. I believed that we could do it. I believed we were capable of doing it. I still believe we were capable at the time to do it, and it was disappointing not to. And I think it's like anything, when you don't necessarily you've got this sight that you've worked really hard for, and you've really kind of been your target, and you fall short. But I think for me, the kind of way that I was able to keep going and the motivation behind it was, I mean, firstly, I knew that the disappointment in some ways helped. The hurt of not achieving kind of meant that I had that hunger that I still wanted to go on. I think if I'd ever got to the point where I'd kind of gone, okay, well, actually, you know what, I'm okay with this silver medal, I'm okay with this bronze medal, then actually that would have maybe been the point where I'd said, maybe the gold isn't the thing I need or the thing that I'm after. But the fact that it did hurt me, the fact that I was disappointed with it, I think really meant I had that hunger and desire to carry on and go for it. But then I think a lot of the time, my big motivation was actually, I mean, I talk about the goal being my motivation. What actually was my real motivation was to be the best I could be.
Yeah.
And that actually was always my driving point. And I think, and that's what was the thing that was allowing me to keep going. Because I think after London, for instance, when we got the bronze medal, if I'd sat down and said, okay, well, I've got the bronze medal, but actually I'm as good as I possibly think I can be, that at that point I would have probably gone, okay, actually, you know what? I've achieved what I want to achieve. This is just where I am. I've reached my potential. Maybe this is the time I quit. But the fact that I was always able to go, okay, I haven't actually achieved my biggest target of being the best I can be.
Yeah.
And so therefore I've got room to improve. And it was always that, well, there's always areas I could say, okay, I could have done this better, or I could have done that better. So that always gave me the motivation to say, okay, well, because I could do this better and that better, therefore I can achieve that target of being better. And I think that was actually underneath the trying to get the gold medal was always the hidden motivation behind it. It was actually just trying to be the very best athlete I could be. And because I didn't feel I was, therefore there was always room to keep going and keep improving. And I think that for me, it was that kind of reevaluation of being able to say, okay, well, where can I find speed? What can I do differently to go faster, to make myself a better athlete? And there was always those areas I could identify.
Yeah.
And if ever I'd probably got to the point where I couldn't identify them anymore, then I probably would have called it a day a lot earlier. But there was all those areas where I could see room for improvement. And as long as they were there, I was hungry to keep pushing because I wanted to reach my potential. And I mean, it's weird because I still don't really feel I met it in Rio. Even though I got the gold medal, I still have that. But there is a point where you have to say, okay, well, there's definitely, even in Rio, there's still areas I feel I could have done better. But there is a point where you have to say, okay, well, when do you stop? When is the right time? And for me, I kind of achieved the thing and achieved the medal I wanted, and there was other things I wanted to do in life. So it felt, even though I hadn't still reached it, I don't know, you can't keep going forever.
No, I think it's so powerful what you said there, Matt. And it's something that I certainly strive to get across with the athletes that I work with, that although obviously, athletes the idea is to win, isn't it? The idea is to win the league, to win that trophy, to become a world champion, become an Olympian, become a gold medal. That is the idea. But I feel that as you've said there so eloquently, that only happens by actually not focusing on that. Because what needs to be focused on is exactly what you said there, that I've got to become the best version of myself, and then keep asking yourself, and checking off, am I there yet? Am I there yet? And as long as people are honest with themselves about that, then that, as you're saying, really, that line can be quite infinite. Obviously, in some respects, in sport, eventually time, and aging will start to have a factor, won't it? But there's always that room for improvement in what anybody ever does. And I think sometimes some athletes can get lost in that a little bit, in that they don't quite acknowledge that you're not going to be perfect, and you're not striving to be perfect. You're just striving to keep getting better and keep being honest with yourself. Well, these areas I've done fantastically well. I've made all these progressions in this, and this. However, now I need to look at some other areas which, if I haven't achieved what I want to achieve, to then start picking some areas where, well, I could get 10% better at this, 5% better at that, or whatever it may be. And I think sometimes, athletes and just people in general are a little bit too scared to not look at certain things and say, where they can improve, but also striving to be this perfect, athlete, perfect person, and that isn't there, is it? Like the greatest, sporting achievement that was ever done, whatever it was, I think Nadia Comaneci, her perfect tennis score, is regardless of that. But if you was to sit down with her, she would be able to find fault in it, wouldn't she? And think, I could still do this and this and this better. And it's not, and that doesn't make you pessimistic or negative. It's just opens the door for more growth, doesn't it? I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of one of the things I kind of learned early, because I do think it's exactly that. this idea in your head to win and be successful, you've got to be perfect. It can get in the way a lot of the time. And I think that, so going back to when I first started going into Athens, I very much, as my first games, I watched the Olympics previously on TV. I saw these kind of these people performing, and I had this in my mind, this real kind of vision that in order to achieve and be successful and get a gold medal, you had to be perfect. Everything had to be perfect. Like every training session had to go really well and really smoothly, and the build-up needed to go smoothly, and that's just not realistic. So when I kind of we were in a double, we got selected in a double, and we just had a really bad season between me and my doubles partner. So for people who aren't into don't know rowing, a double is two people. So there was me, there's two of us, and I know it's quite obvious in the name, but just to clarify. But basically, we'd had a really dogged season. We hadn't he'd been ill, and I'd been ill, and he'd been ill, and basically we got to the games and we had anything but this perfect run up. And because I was so fixated on the fact that it needed to be perfect, I'd almost talked myself out of doing well before I got there, because it was like, well, how can we possibly do well when everything's just been going so wrong up to this point? And actually, yeah, okay, we raced okay, but we probably could have raced a bit better. We probably wouldn't have won it, but we certainly probably should have made the final. So we definitely came away from Athens having underperformed. And I remember kind of going into Beijing. I still had in my head this kind of idea that everything had to be perfect all the time. And I was chatting to one of the other guys in my 8, and he kind of said to me, he just said, look, in order for us to win, we don't have to be perfect. We just have to be better than our opposition. And for me, that was kind of this light bulb moment, because I was like, oh, because it just released the.
Oh, no. Right, so one of the questions that I always ask everybody who comes on, Matt, obviously my background is in psychology, trying to help people master their mind so that they can get out and step into their specific sporting arena and perform to their potential. And I'm curious to know as to how much you think doing what you did, getting your silver, then the bronze, and then the gold, how much of being able to achieve that was physical and how much is mental. In order for you to achieve what you achieved, if you could put a percentage in it, and I know everybody finds this challenging, but the vast majority of the time they manage to put a percentage on it. What percent is physical, and what percent of it is mental in your eyes?
Oh god! I mean, percentage is always it's probably a bit of a hard. I mean, you have to have some natural talent.
Yeah.
Obviously, without a doubt. But I do think the mental side of it is massively underestimated. So, I mean, maybe 60-40, physical to mental.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's really hard to put percentage, but I mean, I think for me, it's something I'm really interested in as well, and it's something I kind of ask myself a lot about, because I mean, I've seen people that on paper look way more naturally, physically talented than I have, that haven't yet necessarily achieved the success I have, and I've also seen people who naturally and physically are probably way less talented than me, and also have achieved the same levels. And so I think that it's I mean, the mental side of it is hugely underestimated in my mind, and that's the problem. And I mean, we have this thing in rowing called World Class Start, where we not me, but we have like a group of coaches or organisations, and they go to schools or universities or whatever, and they test all the obvious physical things that you can test for rowing to determine whether people might be successful rowing. It's height, arm span, leg strength. They do a numerous amount of physical tests, But for me, my biggest bugbear with the program is the fact that there's no way of testing the mental attributes, and that for me is so valuable and so key, and that's why I think that you see these people in sport who on paper shouldn't achieve the things they achieve but do, and I think that's because what goes on in their head is so much more powerful than people get the credit for. And yeah, I mean, I think like obviously with rowers, it's about being big and strong, and everyone always assumes it's going to be the biggest, strongest people that win. But actually, arguably probably the best ever rower that we've ever had is not on paper. It's anything but that. He's not the biggest guy. He's a Kiwi guy, and he's been incredibly successful. He's broken every record you could possibly imagine. But on paper, you would never think he'd be anything but club rower.
Yeah.
But clearly has a great physiology. There's no doubt about that. He has internally, I mean, externally, he might not look like the biggest, strongest rower, but clearly he has a great physiology, and that's something you can't always see. But equally, I do think mentally, he's a very kind of, you have to have it. Yeah, I think all the top sportsmen do. So yeah, I think it's a rambling way of answering the question, but I think it's hugely important.
When you didn't quite get the gold in Beijing, and then you didn't get it again in London, how much of that do you think was mental? Did the mental side of thing? Did your frame of mind? Was there something mentally that was occurring then that was not occurring when you got the gold in Rio? Was there something different going on internally for you or your team or collectively as a pair? Was there something that had shifted through those three games to that all important final one?
So I think, I mean, so London, Rio, so Beijing, London, and Rio for me they were kind of three very different games. So first of all, I was in the same boat for all three of them. I was in the 8. So for rowing, the 8 is the Blue Rhythm event. It's the fastest event we have. It's the biggest team. It's the biggest boat. But it also means there's most moving parts. So it's the most complex out of all the boat categories. But I mean, I would just kind of say that just to give you a kind of brief summary, in Beijing, we had great preparation. Everything, the build up to the games was as good or better than we could have expected. We turned up in the games with real belief that we could win, and I mean, ultimately, we probably just didn't perform as well as we could do on the day. With London, it was kind of the complete opposite. We'd had terrible preparation. We'd had a lot of illnesses and injuries within the boat, and we definitely turned up in the final not the favourite crew. We knew that the German crew were by far the favourites, and we'd had a few good tussles with them through the season, but we'd never beaten them. Yeah. But we really kind of set the stall out, and we sat down the night before, and we kind of said, look, okay, if we just on paper, if we race our race, they race their race, they're going to beat us. So we've got to do whatever we can to try and basically disrupt them, to try and put them under pressure and hope that they crack. And we went out. I mean, rowing's a simple sport. It's A to B as fast as possible. But like you said, a lot of it comes down to those mental games. And although we can't physically do anything to affect our opposition, if mentally we can crack them, mentally we can put them under pressure, then we might be able to beat them. Whereas on paper, we shouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
So we kind of had a simple strategy that we would go off a lot harder than we'd ever done before, and really try and put them under pressure and hope that crack them. And sometimes you've got to give credit to the opposition that they didn't crack. They stuck to what they were able to do. And although with 200 meters from the line, which is 10% left of a rowing race, because a rowing race is 2,000 meters long, it was all working. I mean, ultimately, the wheels fell off, and they kind of, I said credit to them. We weren't able to crack them, and that they were able to continue, and they won. And because of the effort we put in, I think if we'd have rode a different tactics, we would have come away with the silver.
Right.
Because we were all out for that gold,
Yeah.
it meant that then the Canadians were able to slip through on the line, and we ended up with the bronze. But for me, going away from that race, completely opposite to Beijing, for me, that was the best race we could have done on the day.
Yeah.
I have no regrets of how we raced on the day. It was very much more the preparation. So I'd had two different experiences, and of kind of one where we got the preparation right and maybe not performed on the day, and then the other one where the preparation hadn't been good, but we'd managed to perform well on the day. And then Rio, yeah, surprise, surprise, it was kind of, we didn't actually have that great preparation, but it was managed a lot better.
Right.
So we still turned up at the games full of confidence, knew we could win, and yeah, we performed. But to go back to your original question, I think the big key difference between Beijing and London and Rio, for me, was that on the start line in Rio, I knew absolutely we could win it. Whereas the start line for Beijing and maybe a little bit London, I believed we could win it, but I didn't know we could win it. And that for me was the big mental difference, that Beijing, Rio, I knew absolutely if we raced and performed the way I knew we were capable of doing, we would win. Yeah. Whereas Beijing, it was a case of, and London, it was like, okay, if we do something, if we race the best race, I think we can win it, but I didn't know. And that's the kind of, that difference mentally is really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that a lot of that comes down to, I mean, okay, if we forget about Beijing for a little bit, a lot of the difference between London and Rio, I mean, we had a very talented day in London as we did in Rio, but a big difference was the coach. The coach we had in Rio, Jürgen, he's a very accomplished, successful rowing coach. I mean, I think he's got more gold medals than I can remember.
Yeah.
But because of that, he instilled that confidence in with us. And his approach to the boat was very different. And I think that really fed over to the crew. So we actually, I mean, largely we had maybe not as disruptive, but similar disruptive year to we'd had in London. But the difference was with Jürgen, because he's very confident with himself, he's a very confident coach, he was able to instill that confidence in the crew to say, okay, look, that result might not have gone the way we wanted, but don't worry, we're still on the right track and we will win in Rio. We will win and come the final. Yeah. And there's always that constant message that it doesn't matter if we haven't won the other races built up to it. As long as we win that final, we'll be the Olympic champions. Whereas our coach in London, he was a lot less experienced. I don't think he managed the boat as well. And if ever the result didn't go well, it was always a panic. Okay, we've got to make sure we win the next race. And if we didn't win that race next, it was more panic. We've got to win the next one. Yeah. And that just snowballed. There's a snowball effect. Whereas having kind of Jürgen with the confidence and the calm and influence he had kind of kept us on this constant track of, look, we will win that last race. So yeah, we were all able to set the start line, and we knew that everything we'd done up to that point had built to winning that last race, and that's all that counted. And I think it's again, it just comes back to that kind of the mentality that kind of they kind of been instilled with us, that that was what we were there to do.
Yeah, that's so powerful listening to you describe that. And as I said, as we said at the start, that believing, and as you said, there's almost like a slightly different levels of belief, isn't there? That you can take belief to the point of certainty, and that's where I think real greatness, like you achieved in that event, is achieved. The Michael Jordans, the Ronaldos, the Daley Thompsons, they have this level of certainty about their ability, trusting their ability, trusting all the training, all the hours, all the preparation, trusting themselves, trusting a team. and trusting your coach, like you said there. All that seems like it was like building this fireball of certainty that, this is happening, this is it. And just that, having that slight doubt was perhaps enough to not quite see you over the line. And I really believe that, that the great athletes, that this is what they take with them. They have this level of certainty about themselves and their ability and a trust in themselves. Once an athlete gets to the point when they really trust themselves, and if they have a team and trust the team, then that's when something different changes. And somebody like, as I said, Michael Jordan and Ronaldo was able to keep bringing that level of trust and certainty into their arena, like consistently over time, whereas some athletes aren't always able to keep it at that level.
I think for me it's kind of on a simple terms. If you're racing somebody that you know that you beat, that you feel and certainly that you're better than and you should beat. I don't know, if they do something funny, they do an odd race and they get in front of you, well, mentally you're like, well, hold on a minute, this shouldn't happen, and you do everything you possibly can. Go, no, I'm not accepting this, and you get, in a rowing terms, you get your boat back in front of them. You just don't accept it because in your head there's that certainty that you're better than them, and there's no way this should be happening, so you're not going to let it happen. Whereas I think when you kind of go into a race and, I don't know, maybe it's somebody you've not raced before or somebody who's beaten you the last 5 times, and you think, okay, well, this time I can beat them, and you really think in your head this time you could beat them, but then again you find yourself down on them, then suddenly, rather than that kind of absolute kind of dogged determination, going, no, I'm not going to accept this, I think you do have that mentally, that kind of, okay, well, I thought I could beat them, but obviously I can't beat them, and that doubt seeps in. And I think it's a very subtle thing that between, kind of that level of certainty, like, no, I am better than this person or crew or whatever sport it is, and thinking you're better, because as I said, when things don't go quite your way, if you're certain, you just do not accept it. There's not that absolute unequivocal unacceptance of that you're gonna let that happen. Whereas, I don't know, I think you see it in every sport. I mean, you see it in football teams, for instance, when you'll see a team turn up and they think that, and they play really well, and suddenly the favourite team goes 1 goal up, and it's been really close, and then suddenly, before you know, it's 2, 3, 4 goals.
Yeah,
because it's like that sudden, like, oh, actually, we thought we could beat them, but we can't. But I think it's that, it's really powerful, and I think definitely. But it is very, like I said, it's a very hard thing to kind of master. Certainly, like I said, and that's why I think the people who are doing it for the first time, like they're the kind of the real kind of revolutionists, and they are, because they are doing something that has never been done before. Yeah. So for them to really, really believe and have that certainty in their head that they can do it, having never done it, is I think it is really kind of powerful.
Definitely. I can understand more in terms of what you were saying at the start now about what you meant by that, about the people who are the first at doing it, because there is that unknown there. Not quite sure if it's possible, but when you know, you know. But if you don't know, and if there's no other evidence that it's possible, then it's a different challenge then to create certainty when there's a lack of evidence. When these men and women in various different fields, not just in sport, when they do it, when the evidence isn't there, they've been able to pull that certainty from somewhere that almost shouldn't be there, I guess. I don't know, have you ever seen the documentary on Amazon, Free Solo, about the climber? I mean,
I watched it recently, and absolutely scares me to death. I don't know how. I mean, those guys take it to a different level. I mean, that for me is. I mean, I thought I was pretty confident in my ability, but I mean that just takes it to the.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. So I mean, I guess that for me is probably the absolute ultimate. Belief in yourself.
Yeah, because any a second of doubt in that process of him trying to make it up that wall with no ropes, and I think it was 3,000 feet to get to the top with no rope. If doubt creeps in at any point, he's dead. There's no doubt about it. So I don't know if you remember when they actually scanned his brain and checked his amygdala, which is the emotional centers of the brain in the hippocampus, and he compared to the average amygdala, it was very, very different. He had, in my opinion, it's different to what they say on the show. They was alluding to the fact that he might have been born that way. I do see it differently. I think he was able to train his mind over years and years and years of just gradually keep increasing the level of difficulty. Because you can't just go from not doing that to doing that, and you have to kind of build up to these things, like you were saying about the experience of. Sometimes you just need the experience to go through it to learn it, and I believe that he was able to train his mind to turn it off. And I think one of the things that gives me quite a lot of assurance in that is that I help athletes do it. A lot of the problems that athletes have is the self-talk. They struggle to turn off that voice of doubt, or struggle to turn off seeing themselves making mistakes and errors. And some people accept that, but what they don't know is that there are lots of techniques out there, not just ones that I teach, but other people out there who can help people turn off that self-talk, turn it off. If people spend too much time thinking about what they don't want to happen, thinking about letting people down. What if I don't make it today? What if they beat us? What if this goes wrong? And some athletes get caught in that loop, and that drives this state of anxiety, really. But when you flip that on its head and you start to focus on exactly what you want to achieve and be flexible with that and get your self-talk moving in that direction, then you can start charging the emotional state in a different way. And I'd imagine that when you achieve the goal that day, that you were probably in the flow state for that. And I spent a lot of time working with athletes on the flow state and then teaching them how to get into it. And when somebody's in the flow state, there actually is no thought. There's next to no thought. The conscious mind is turned off, and the performance is just coming out of them subconsciously without any interruption from this nagging voice. I'm curious to know when you were in that boat for those 2,000 meters, when you won the gold, how did it feel? How when you remember back to that, what was it like? What were you seeing? What were you hearing? How was it feeling there when you just nailed it? When you just knew? How was that experience for you?
To be honest, I can't really remember.
Yeah.
I think like you said, like you touched on just then, because when you get to that level and you've trained so much, my mentality was always I work really hard in training, and I really think about what I'm doing in training, so that when I get to a race, I don't have to think. It's exactly as you just said. It's about that kind of flow state, and you just let your body, you do what you've trained it to do, and sometimes by overthinking things, I get in my own way. Yeah. So for me, I sat in the start line and I didn't sit there thinking, okay, well, what am I going to be doing at 1,000 meters? I said, okay, let's just get the first couple of strokes right, and the rest will take care of itself. And it is kind of that, very much. So I can't I can't remember all the. I mean, I can remember it went well. I can remember this great feeling of okay, wow, this is. I mean, some people ask me. I get asked all the time, at what point did you know you're going to win? And I genuinely could say, hand on heart, that I knew I was going to win after 10 strokes. I mean, we take 240, 230 odd strokes. So after 10 strokes, I knew we were going to win. And that was simply because I was able to sit on the start line, and I knew, and I really knew that if, providing we did what we were capable of doing, we would win. There was no other crew there that was capable of beating us. I knew that we'd done everything right. I knew that the boat was going well. I knew we had the speed. I just knew that providing we did what we were capable of doing, that no one would get close to us. So for me, the only kind of thing in my mind was ever, okay, well, are we going to do what we're capable of doing? And after 10 strokes, it was like, we are doing it. It's good. We're going to win. And I think that for me was the kind of, the kind of real, that was kind of my memory, just the start and thinking, we've won this. It's kind of, so, but then the rest of it, like I said, I mean, for me, it was certainly the thing I learned through my career in terms of, for me in racing, was that it was to not overthink it. Because actually, the more I thought about, okay, what do I need to do at this point? What do I need to do at this point? I kind of get in my own way. I trip on my own feet. Whereas I trained for so long, and I've done. I mean, by the time I get to that final, I've done millions and millions of road strokes.
Yeah.
So if I'm thinking about every individual stroke, it's like, well, it's too late. It's gone. You just got to let that subconscious and kind of come across and let that training come out.
Yeah. Well, go on. Sorry,
just to touch on your other point, I think that, I mean, you mentioned before that about how some people say that somebody's just born that way, but you think that actually you can be taught it, and I would actually really agree with that. I think that's actually the problem, is that because some people have the perception that some people are just born like mentally stronger or mentally more, it's quite dangerous, because it means that they almost then think, well, hold on a minute, if I'm not like that initially, then I can never be like that. And I think actually that's my biggest kind of light bulb moment, was appreciating that everybody is the same. And so just to kind of go back again, it was the build up to Athens. And as an athlete, I've won the juniors, I've been successful. I used to get really nervous. Like before racing, I get the typical like butterflies in my stomach, feeling sick. I didn't want to eat anything. I mean, I just would get really nervous. And I remember so I joined the CE team, and I was building to Athens. And at the time, Matthew Pinsent, who is our second most successful ever rower, was still around. He was going for his 4th gold medal. So I was in the team with him at the time, and we were, so I'd see him around racing and build up to racing, and Matthew just looked so relaxed. Like he just looked so he looked like he was off asleep. It just looked like it was just normal day at the office, and he'd just go and do his race, and he just looked so chilled. I used to sit there thinking, well, I feel like I'm going to be sick all the time. I feel so nervous. Like, why can't I be like him? And I had in my head, in order to do well and be successful, I needed to be like Matthew, like it's so relaxed. And I felt anything but relaxed. I just felt like I was so tense. And then Matthew, just before the Athens Games, Jürgen, because Matthew was kind of the senior athlete, and Jürgen kind of asked him to kind of speak to the rest of the team and kind of pass down his experience. And so he had a kind of talk with him, and he talked about about how nervous he would get before each race, and how he would often sit on the start line before he went on to the race and be sick over the side of the boat because he'd be that nervous.
Yeah.
And suddenly for me, that was kind of like, oh my God, wow. Like I thought this guy was so relaxed, and like I was different to him. And actually, as soon as I appreciated that, he felt the exact same way I felt. And actually we had the same feelings. It was just my perception of him was different. Like my perception from the outside was he was super relaxed, wasn't nervous, was kind of half asleep, but actually internally he felt the exact same I did. And as soon as I realized that, then I realized, well, actually, hold on a minute, if it's normal, then clearly I can go out and perform, and this is a normal feeling, and it's a feeling I can control and use to my advantage.
Yeah.
And from that kind of moment on, I was able to kind of control those nerves, and actually to the point where I kind of, what I learned throughout my career is actually they were a good thing, and I actually braced them, because I knew the more nervous I got, the more I was the better I'd race, the better performance I would get. So actually, every time I was like, okay, I'm feeling really nervous, I'd be like, okay, brilliant, this is great. This is exactly what I need. I need that to go and perform. And I kind of learned how to control it and use it as a positive thing, rather than a negative thing. But I think a lot of that started by just appreciating that we all go through those same processes and thoughts, and it's just learning how to control them and how to use them in a positive manner. Because I think a lot of the time, I mean, it's like a lot of life, it's people's perceptions of other people are often wrong. And when you realise actually that person is going through the same stuff as you, then suddenly it gives you the break you need to go, okay, well, actually, it's okay to feel like this. This is normal, and I can do something with this.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad that you said what you said there, Matt, because I just think it's so powerful. You know, that message there, those words that you've just said for everybody, whether they're in sport or not. And what you're talking about there was something that I fell foul of, not in terms of sport, but when I was at school as a kid. And I would think like that in terms of my intelligence. I would look at I wouldn't do, for a while, I wasn't doing all that great at school. I wouldn't do that well on tests and things like this. But I was good at sport. And I found sport quite easy, really. So I started drawing this conclusion that, I'm born good at sport, and I'm not born smart. And the guys in class over there who are doing really well, they're born smart, and that's why they find it easy, and that's why I can't do it and they can. And I remember having a pivotal moment in my teenage years at high school, year 9 going into year 10, where I was just really adamant that I wanted to do better than what I was, and that I just wasn't going to accept that about myself anymore. I was just, whether I was born that way or not, whether that was true or not, I'm going to find a way of actually getting better at tests. I'm going to find a way. I want to get my GCSEs, because I believe that in getting the GCSEs, if I didn't do the things that I wanted to do in sport, that then I needed something else. And I didn't, the results wasn't telling me that I was that smart. And then I had to change something. I had to just become so determined to start doing things that I wasn't doing. This simple thing called revising. It wasn't that. It's because I would sit in class and I would be focused. I would want to learn. It just wasn't going in for me, and I had to break out of that. This mindset that I was born one way, and I was born the way that was limiting me, that wasn't limiting other people. And when I started to change that, and then as I did that, the results started to change. And I'll never forget for the rest of my life the day that the subject I struggled with the most at school was chemistry. And then I went from being near the bottom of the class one year, and then when I had this moment where it's like I'm finding a way to improve my intellect and intelligence, and I went from there to getting the highest in the class, and I got an A. And I can still remember him handing that paper over and looking at this 80 something percent. I can't remember the exact percent. I was like, whoa, right. I really was telling myself a whole load of crap. And one of the other areas that I went into it in doing the research on talent and ability and sporting excellence was the whole nature versus nurture. And I spent quite a lot of time looking at genetics and epigenetics. I don't know if you know too much about it, but epigenetics is all about the study of how the environment affects the gene. And that's been a massive breakthrough in the last 20 years in science, because the story was that the genes that you got from mum and dad and their mum and dad, etc., you've got what you've got, and therefore you can't change it. And if that is the truth, then you're stuck with that, aren't you? If that's the truth. And what the study of epigenetics did was open up that box, because what they found out was that although you may have a gene, that they can be turned on or off. They can be expressed or not expressed. So you can have genes within you that are lying dormant, that are not being activated, but your environment turns it on. So where you are taking your body, what environment you're putting it in, is actively turning on and reshaping these genes. And I find that really powerful in giving myself and other people that belief that you can change things. You're not limited to looking at this person who from the outside has these advantages, and that because you don't have them, you can't achieve that. And so, I'm really glad that you said what you said there, Max. It seems like you kind of think a similar sort of philosophy there.
Yeah, I think definitely. I probably. So obviously, I know you know already, but since I've retired, I've retrained to be a commercial pilot. So that's kind of what I'm doing since rowing. But I think for me, one of the biggest things was, obviously I went through. It's something I really wanted to do. It's something I remember when I was a kid, I wanted to do, and that was kind of. I still remember like my earliest careers day, and people saying, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to be a pilot." I was just fascinated by planes. But obviously, rowing kind of. You've got a much smaller window. You can't. It's not something you can start when you're 40 and carry on to 60. So you've got to do that while you can. So that's the priority. But then when I kind of came to the point of retiring and knew that kind of I was coming to the end of sport, I was looking at what else I wanted to do next. And there was always this in the background of I wanted to fly. I wanted to be a pilot. But in order to do it, like the training's really intense, and you've got this. The first 6 months is intense studies, ground school. And they say it's like a degree's worth in 6 months. It's kind of 14 exams. It's really intense studying. But I was quite similar at school. Like I was really into sport, but I was always told at school, "Oh yeah, you're sporty. You're put into brackets, and you're either sporty or you're academic." And I was told, "Well, I'm sporty, but it means you're not academic." And obviously, because that's kind of what I applied myself to. I did well at sport, and I didn't do so well when I was studying. And obviously, I hadn't studied for quite a long time, and so that was the bit of the course I was most worried about. I was thinking, okay, well, how am I going to be able to cope being in the classroom again? Am I going to be able to cope kind of going through all the tests and do all that again? But then I kind of came to the conclusion, if it's something you really want to do, then you've got to do it. And actually, I used the things I learned from sport to apply myself to it. So not only did I do well, I excelled at it. I actually did I by far did better than my expectations. And it was just about applying myself to it and actually using the lessons I learned from sport. I think it also benefits now that things have moved on from when I was at school. So when I was at school, there was one way to learn and that was it. Whereas now with media and everything else, like there's so many different ways to learn things. And I think that's a great thing. I think my learning style is definitely not reading books. It's kind of more visual, and the great thing about you can watch YouTube videos to your heart's content or whatever, or there's lots of different ways, and there's lots of but I think ultimately it's having that thing you want to do and applying yourself to do it, and whether it's sport or academics or whatever it is, I think that's the key thing. It's about kind of having that goal set yourself and just applying yourself properly. And I look back and think, God, if I'd applied myself to the way I did to my flying studies to schoolwork, then I could have done that way better. But at the time, I didn't have, like I said, I was kind of put in this bracket that you're just not academic, you're sporty. And for a long time, I told that becomes what you tell yourself in your head. So it's like you said, you kind of think, okay, well, I'm not capable of doing that. But then instead, I was actually, for me, able to say, once I realised that I've just got to apply myself in the same way I did to my sport, suddenly you can by far exceed your expectations.
Definitely.
And I think, it's kind of, the problem is, I think, like, you don't often got told that. It's very easy that you to kind of get put into a box and a bracket, and that's what I mean, people say sticks and stones don't break your bones, but words never hurt you. But actually, what people tell you becomes quite powerful, because that's what you start telling yourself.
Definitely.
And actually, to be able to break out that box, then sometimes it's quite difficult. But I think it's realizing you can, and realizing, you if you work hard at something and you apply yourself, you can kind of change what you might think of yourself.
Definitely. I think, as you say, that old phrase, sometimes these old phrases that got brandished around like sticks and stones, break your bones and names, or words can't hurt me. But as you say, they can, because words stick, and these words, these sentences, these ways that we humans have of communicating, if they are accepted, and we always have a choice to accept the words or not. But when you're younger, and if especially if you're not from, or if you've grown up and you're not quite as confident and secure in yourself for whatever reason or not, then those negative words can get accepted far more easily, and then those words become this story, and then this story becomes this thing that people keep telling themselves over and over again, and then that is the story that people tell themselves, which is wiring in the beliefs about themselves. And the more they tell them story, the more they're ingraining it into their subconscious mind, to the point where they don't believe that they can do so many things, and they just then stick to a small number of things that they can actually do, and then don't dare try to come outside of that, because this story is trapping them in a box that they can't break out of. And I use the analogy that beliefs are like magnets. They attract to them, whatever it is that they believe, whether it's a positive belief about yourself or a negative, whichever way it is. If you believe in yourself genuinely, then you're going to attract a whole host of things that come with that. However, if you don't believe in yourself, like in my case, I didn't think I was smart, and I didn't think I was born smart. So that was setting up myself to live a life where I was avoiding doing things. Because if I was born not smart, then there's no point in even picking up a book and doing the revision, because no matter how much you read, it's not going to change something that I'm born with. And people need to know that these paradigms and these stories that people tell themselves, that's all they are, they're stories. But people find it so difficult to break out of that narrative, to break out of that story. So they never dare try and go and do something that you did, Matt, out of the lack of belief or fear of failure.
Yeah, and I think that's. I mean, for me, it's. I think a lot of it it's as well, like the people you have around you as well really help that as well. And like I said, it's like that. I mean, okay, going back to what we talked about right at the beginning, in terms of me being the first person from Northwich to go on and do internationals and the Olympics. And okay, nobody was telling me at the time, okay, you could be Olympic champion, but they were definitely kind of like giving me the support and the assurance and the belief in myself that allowed me to start on that pathway. And I owe them a lot for that. And I think, my coach at the time, I mean, he was, I still owe him kind of everything that I've got to, because, I mean, he was great, but he was a volunteer and put all this kind of time and effort into me. But as I said, it wasn't that he was necessarily sitting me down saying, okay, you will be the Olympic champion one day, but it was very much like, look, it was just that constant reassurance of, you're capable of doing this. Yeah. And then, it just kind of feels, and it's like that big snowball effect of it just builds and builds and builds. If we go back to then the flying, I mean, there's no doubt about it. There was times when I knew I wanted to do it, but I definitely had doubts about whether I would be capable to do it. But luckily, I had supportive people around me to say, no, look what you've managed to achieve once you set your mind to it. Look what you've done. Like, you've set your mind to something. Okay, you might not get it straight away. It might take you a bit longer, but look what you're able to achieve. You will be able to do it. If you put that same kind of discipline and kind of apply yourself in the same way, you will achieve that. And that's, so yeah, again, I owe those people a lot, that I had that kind of support around me to help me kind of on that path. And I think that's the and like you said, it is quite easy to, people can quite easily put you in a box, and then you end up believing us. But then equally, sometimes you need people to help you come out of that box. And I mean, I think I was very fortunate that I've had those people. So yeah, I mean, I think there's, sometimes you do need that support as well.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. It's, everybody, needs the environment. A flower needs the right environment for it to flourish. That support. It needs the rain. It needs the sun. It needs the soil. It needs the fertilizer. It needs that support network to allow it to grow. And you take that support, that environment, those other ingredients out, and that flower won't ever flourish to become the flower that it can be. And I do think that's certainly one of the things that I've come across, where talented athletes who are struggling, the younger ones, it's where unfortunately that environment isn't always around them. Whether that's their friends, whether it's family, whether it's the sport itself, whatever reason, that environment isn't quite there to help just keep them on track, to help them when they have the doubts, to keep giving them that confidence, that belief, that advice at the right time. And some athletes struggle to know where to go to get it. And I think one of the great things about the world today is that we have things like this. People listening to you speak, Matt, can take so much from it. There's so much out on the internet these days, interviews with people, giving advice that people should be searching for. If you've not got that environment, then you need to try to do something to somehow create one, that's going to allow you to get you where you want to be.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I think ultimately what you tell yourself is ultimately still the most powerful thing, but definitely what people tell you has an effect on that. And I mean, you could end up, I think ultimately, if what you tell yourself when you look in the mirror is kind of it is the key thing, but definitely other people have an influence on that. And I think it's key to appreciate that as well.
Yeah. I want to be respectful of your time, Matt. So I've only got a couple of questions left, because I'm enjoying this so much that I could keep going all day. And obviously you've got things that you need to do. So last couple of questions, Matt. When you look back over your career and what you've done and what you've achieved, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about it now?
I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'd rather be sitting here saying I'm a 4-time Olympic gold medalist. And I think that, I mean, obviously, there's no doubt. I definitely look back at my career and wish I was more successful, wish I'd won more gold medals. But equally, I think for me, then, having the journey I went through, equally is what made the gold medal so special. That people ask me is okay, like, what does it feel when you look at the medal? And actually, the medal itself is, I mean, it's very nice to look at. But for me, the way I see it is the medal is for everybody else. That's for other people to enjoy. But for me, the real medal is that kind of achievement, knowing that I had this big ambition, this big goal. And I mean, okay, like I mentioned earlier, that my big goal was to be the very best I could ever be, but the gold medal fits in with that. To know that I kind of had that determination and I went through those difficult times to achieve it, I think it's definitely helped. Well, certainly without doubt, it's helped me now. Obviously with flying, first of all, I finished in 2016 and it's now 2022, and I'm just about to, hopefully in the next month, I'll be fully fly in a plane. But so it's been a long time. It's been like a long road with various reasons, which some of my own influence with breaking my leg on a bike accident that definitely delayed me a year. So that's probably something that was I can hold my hands up, was my own fault. But then obviously a pandemic that has completely crashed the aviation world is kind of out of my control. But I think the kind of lessons I learned through rowing, that determination to keep going, knowing that I will get there eventually, has definitely helped me in this new career trying to fly. And I think that's kind of, when I look back at my career, that I would have liked it to have been more successful, but actually the kind of downtimes have made the good times so good. And it's that achievement, that having that determination has now given me that confidence. Actually, you know what? If I am really determined, I do really apply myself to something, I will get there eventually. And I think certainly for that, I'm kind of a stronger person for it. So it's kind of a bittersweet. That I'd like to have more gold medals to show, but equally I don't know if I regret it, because I think it's definitely made me a stronger, more determined person for it.
Yeah, I can definitely sense that about you, Matt. Maybe if you got those goals, maybe you might have lost that bit of desire to go and do the flying. Maybe you might have sat back and felt you'd achieved enough, and maybe you wouldn't have then gone for the flying.
I think it's definitely taught me resilience. I think which is what I've needed, because so it's been a lot longer road than I was expecting with the pandemic. So I think it's definitely taught me some good resilience, and I think it always stands you in good stead.
Definitely. My last question for you, Matt, is what's your definition of sporting excellence? What does it mean? What does it mean to you?
It's a good question. I think sporting excellence it's about making the right decisions it's about making good decisions to achieve what you're trying to achieve. People. One of the things I really hate is that when people talk about you've got to do everything at 100%. You've got to do everything like you. I remember I had a talk by one of the other former rowers, and I remember him sitting there saying, "Okay, well, you need to be sat on the start line knowing that you've done everything you possibly can to give yourself the best chance to win a gold medal." And I kind of sat back and I thought, well, that's just ridiculous, because I could have always done an extra couple of minutes of training. And then if I'd done that, well, I could then have done another extra couple of minutes of training a day. And where does it stop? Where do you think? When do you have I don't know? Do you end up just doing 24 hours of constant training because you think that's what it takes to win a gold medal? Whereas I think actually it's about making good decisions that will help you to perform to the best that you can perform, and whether that and sometimes realistically, that good decision is to have a break, because that's what you need at the time. And for me, the older I got, the more experience I got, the more I realized that actually it wasn't just about everything that I did put into rowing, it's about also stuff I did away from rowing. So actually sometimes, I don't know, if things were getting on top of me and I was getting stressed or with rowing, and actually going out for a night out with friends was a good decision, because it meant that I could go out and I could enjoy myself and I could forget about rowing. And then when I came back to training on the next day or whenever it was, I was refreshed and I could start again. Whereas if I'd stayed in and just brewed over it and then kind of got to that cycle again, I probably would have turned up and I had another bad session because I was trying too hard. But then equally on other times, it's you being asked to go out and you can't. You need to rest. It's the right decision to stay in and sit on the sofa and watch TV. So I think for me, that's kind of in order to excel at sport, it's just about making good, sensible decisions and giving yourself space. That it's not the key decisions are not always the sporting ones. It's not necessarily what you do in training. It could be going out and celebrating or going to a friend's birthday because that's important to you, and by doing that, then it makes you a happier person, and that will help you in sport. And I don't know if that's what other people's sporting excellence is. But I think it's about trying to make good decisions, but appreciating those decisions are not always to just train harder and focus more. And it is sometimes to kind of do stuff away from sport that actually might at the time not think is beneficial, but actually is. Because I think, definitely for me, I feel the more relaxed and happy I became as a person, the better it affected my rowing, and the more kind of the performance increased. So
honestly, Matt, I absolutely love that answer. I didn't want to interrupt you in any way, because I really want that, what you just said there, to be one of our key clips, because what you said there is something that I firmly believe in, that I've picked up on from the research, the work that I've done, and the things that I'm trying to get across to the athletes that I work with. Because, as you say, that if you try to do everything to the best of your ability, gosh, there's only 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week. It isn't possible to just keep doing everything to this high standard. Are you going to clean your house to this high standard? Are you going to keep cleaning your car to this high? You have to make those decisions about what is important, and then what isn't. And things that those decisions, like you said, that you make, these are the things that are important to me. And then you have to hone in on those ones. And there's some things that you can't. There's only so many plates that you can spin, and in trying to live this like perfect world of giving your all for everything, and giving your all only to sport. I thought that was so powerful what you said there. Like,
yeah, I mean, I think for me that was, if I could go back and tell my younger self. I mean, there's lots of lessons I'd love to tell my younger self, but I think that would be kind of the key one. That for me, definitely when I started my career, like my big problem has always been consistency. And it was down to the fact that every session I thought I had to give 100%. So I would do that, and I would do it, and it lasts for a couple of weeks, and then I'd get ill or injured, and then I'd obviously have to recover, and then so it was this constant going up and then down and up and down and down. And then so later on in my career, I realised actually, like you said, you can't give 100% to everything. It's about kind of picking, and like I said, I mean, so actually within the sport arena, but actually, like I said earlier, in other life as well, but certainly in the sport, it's about picking key sessions and going, you know what, they're the ones I'm going to target, and other ones I'm going to say 90% is good enough. Yeah. Because what it allowed me to do was it allowed me to get a lot more consistency in training. It meant that I could do 100% of the program and maybe 90% of the effort. Whereas before I was trying to do 100%, I was only getting 80% of the program at 100% effort.
Yeah.
So actually, like it definitely allowed me to because I do think that unfortunately you hear it so often, everything's got to be 100%, and it just is not realistic. It's just not achievable. And for me, that's not the way that I said. It's about making just good decisions, and sometimes those good decisions is to take a break and take a day off, or go to a birthday, or do things that actually might not be like, might not be about the sport. It might just be about giving yourself, enjoying life, and just kind of making yourself a happier person. And that in itself is going to help you perform better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Matt. I think, that whether it's in sport or outside the sport, you got to enjoy life. That's what it's here for. We're all here to enjoy our time, and sport can, and often is, certainly when you start getting up towards your level, it becomes so pressurized, and I think often athletes then can lose that enjoyment of what they're doing because of the expectation, the messages that they're being told, and then they start kind of cutting off their world from other things outside of sport. Like you said, like sometimes you do just need to go out, maybe have a beer with your mates, one night, and just relax, get away from it, so that you come back the next day, hopefully without a hangover, just feeling more relaxed, feeling just
Sometimes it's good. I mean, if you can train for a hangover, then you can train in your good days as well. So it's not always bad. I mean, so I just said one last point on that. Though, for me, that was meant. I mean, you asked me earlier what kind of motivated me to carry on and how did I get through kind of those disappointing times. And one of the things I really reevaluated and changed from London through to Rio is that I went to London and I was very tunnel vision going to London that in order for that 4 years between Beijing and London to be successful, I needed to win in London. So when I didn't win, I almost mentally, I wrote off those 4 years as a complete kind of failure. But one of the things that when I was then kind of getting through that and I was deciding where to carry on, I kind of looked at that and said, okay, well, that's ridiculous. Like in that 4 year period, I've been the world champion twice. I'd improved a lot of an athlete. I'd been in some great crews. I'd gone to some great rowing camps. And actually, I kind of realized that if I was going to carry on for another 4 years, I needed to enjoy the journey. I couldn't let that kind of the successful failure of that 4 year period be solely deemed by one race. And I needed to kind of enjoy the kind of process along the way and enjoy being with my teammates and not just be so focused on that goal in 4 years' time. And for me, it definitely meant that whereas in London, I kind of sat on the start line and thinking, okay, whether I win or lose this race is going to make or break this 4 years. I was able to sit on the start line in Rio and just be happy that I was there. I was just genuinely, I remember, the lake in Rio was kind of the perfect setting for my final Olympics because it was, normally a rowing lake is like, it's just a pretty much bland 2,000 meter swimming pool out in the middle of nowhere. Whereas the lake in Rio is kind of basically central in the middle of Rio. You've got Christ the Redeemer basically looks down from the start line. You're racing towards like the Ipanema beach. It was just like amazing. I was able to sit there in this fantastic setting and just sit there going, look, I'm just so happy that I'm here. There's nowhere else I want to be. Nice. And I think part of it is because, like I said, you've got to enjoy the sport you're doing. And I think, the big change in mentality is I kind of released the pressure cooker and I just said, look, let's stop focusing on the result all the time. Let's actually just enjoy the process of getting there and enjoy the journey. I think a lot of that as well also, which is why, and with that came the success. And I think it's also a key thing that certainly in professional sport nowadays, it's very easily forgotten. There's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of pressure on athletes, and you can very easily forget that actually you're doing it because you're supposed to love it. I think that definitely is something that you have to be reminded of a few times.
Matt, that is a perfect way to end this interview. I couldn't have asked for somebody to say something better about it all, really. Obviously, I've never done anything like you did, but I have my kind of philosophies about sport and trying to achieve it. And hearing you say something that I feel very aligned to. It was great to hear that from you, and great that people are going to be able to hear yourself say that. And so, I just want to thank you again for coming on and giving up your time, Matt. I've really loved this. It's been an amazing conversation. I just want to thank you for coming on and giving up your time, Matt. I really do appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. It's been great talk. Hopefully some inspiration can come out to some of the athletes you work with. So
definitely, it will indeed. Thanks a lot, Matt. Thank you.
Brilliant. All right, thank you very much.
The Inner Game Podcast, brought to you by the Science of Excellence. Unleash your power. Book your free consultation now.